UFC for 2025 and the last year for pay-per-views and UFC on ESPN is in the books. With a fight year which saw a whole new roster of stars coming through and a new era of champions, 2025 saw some iconic and legendary pay-per-views take place and new double champs coming to the forefront of the sport and history being made by some legendary fighters. The UFC delivered 13 pay-per-views and we are going to look back at this iconic year and what it had to offer and find out what is the best of the best. This is the Fight franchise and every UFC pay-per-view of 2025 ranked from worst to best. Number 13, UFC 321. The worst pay-per-view of the year, UFC 321, was the annual Abu Dhabi pay-per-view, headlined by a huge main event with Tom Aspinall defending his heavyweight title versus Cyril Gane after John Jones ducked out against Aspinall. The prelims of this card was decent with some good fights and finishes where Walter Walker got another heel hook ending the hype train of Louis Sutherland and Quillan Salkeld getting a KO of the year contender with a flatline head kick against Nasrat Haqparast, and we got an amazing fight between Ludovic Klein and Mateusz Rebecki. The main card of this pay-per-view was a real mixed bag with a stunning and shocking KO by Azamat Murzakanov against Alexander Rakic. Alexander Volkov and Jailton Almeida had a boring fight. Umar Nurmagomedov had a competitive fight versus Mario Batista. Mackenzie Dern and Virna Yandiroba had a scrap for vacant strawweight gold. However, it felt hollow as we all knew Zhang Weili was the real champion. The main event, however, is what gets this pay-per-view last. For 4 minutes 35 seconds we had a competitive heavyweight title fight which came unceremoniously to an end via an eye poke from Cyril Gane, with Tom unable to continue, giving this pay-per-view an anticlimactic end. This pay-per-view did however give us a KO of the year contender and some fights and moments, but the main event ending tanked this card, making it the worst pay-per-view of 2025. Number 12, UFC 316. The UFC went to Newark, New Jersey with 2 title fights atop the bill, with some fun fights across the card, where the early prelims and prelims had some fun finishes, where Zombie Jr. got a quick KO and Azamat Murzakanov finished Brenson Ribeiro, and Joshua Van put on a performance against Bruno Silva, capstoned with a 3rd round finish. The main card started with a back and forth bout between Vicente Luque and Kevin Holland, where Holland got a 2nd round submission. This was followed by the hype debut of Patchy Mix versus Mario Batista, where Mix had a horrible debut where he barely fought. This was followed by a scrap between Joe Pyfer and Calvin Gastelum, where Pyfer put heavy hands on Gastelum. The co-main event saw Kayla Harrison become a world champion, dominating Juliana Pena and submitting her and calling out Amanda Nunes after the fight. This was followed by a legendary performance in the main event where Merab Dvalishvili defended his world title versus Sean O'Malley in a rematch where this time Merab left no doubts over who was the better, and the decision of the first fight where Merab finished and submitted O'Malley in the 3rd round. Overall a decent card with nothing special, just an okay card with a grey ending. Number 11, UFC 312. The UFC went to Australia for UFC 312 where a familiar face returned to the land down under, with Sean Strickland looking to reclaim undisputed gold versus Dricus du Plessis, where they went to war in a competitive first fight between both men. This time Dricus du Plessis pitched a shutout for 5 rounds, battering Sean Strickland on the feet for 5 rounds to defend his title. The co-main event saw Zhang Weili pitching out a dominant shutout against who many thought would be her toughest test, Tatiana Suarez, and beat her down to defend her title over 5 rounds. The rest of the main card had fun moments, Taliesin Teixeira getting a 35-second KO, and Jimmy Crute and Rodolfo Bellato having back and forth fun scraps. The rest of the card had some really good fights, an amazing fight of the night between Rong Zhu and Cody Steele. We also got finishes from Gabriel Santos getting a submission win, and Quillan Salkeld getting the meme KO of the year versus Anshul Jubli in less than 20 seconds. Not an amazing pay-per-view, just decent all round. We just could have done with more of the fights delivering. Number 10, UFC 313. The fighter who ruled 2024 came back to defend his belt in 2025. Alex Pereira would headline UFC 313 against Magomed Ankalaev, who many saw as the man to put an end to the Brazilian's title reign. We got a chess match between both men which was close and competitive, where we ended up with a 5-round bout with both men stealing rounds from each other, but in the end Ankalaev would win the decision in a close fight where Ankalaev put an end to Pereira. The co-main event saw Justin Gaethje rematch short notice Rafael Fiziev in a rematch from their bout at UFC 286, where akin to that bout it was a good fight and never hit 5th gear and the fight of the year territory. The main card also had Ignacio Barramondes getting a great submission win against Jalen Turner and the arguable KO of the year where Mauricio Huffy in the 1st round got a spinning wheel kick to flatline and put Bobby Green out cold in an epic win and moment on the main card. The rest of the card had some great fights and finishes, with Joshua Van putting on a great 3-round win versus Ray Saruya, Bruno Ferreira finishing Armor Petrosian, and Carlos Leal finishing Alex Morono. Overall a decent fight card with action up and down the card, just we was let down by the main and co-main event which we wish could have just given a bit more action. Number 9, UFC 318. The UFC in 2025 took a trip to Louisiana to give a legend of the sport a send-off that many in the UFC never get a chance to get. UFC 318 was headlined by Dustin Poirier fighting Max Holloway for the BMF title in what was his retirement fight. This This was a card of two halves, where the first 6 fights saw 6 finishes in a row, with Carly Giudice getting a finish, followed by 3 first-round submission wins in a row from Bruno Ferreira, Ryan Spann and Jimmy Crute. This was then followed by a first-round KO from Islam Dulatov to end some amazing early prelim action. Then the prelims followed, with the hyped Atiba Gutierrez getting a quick finish versus Robert Valentin. After all of those amazing finishes, the card switched where we would get 8 decisions in a row, with the highlight of the early prelims being Brendan Allen and Marvin Vettori having a great fight of the night, where Brendan Allen got a great win to start his epic turnaround of the year for 2025. The main card, Michael Johnson and Daniel Zellhuber, had a great scrap back and forth, where Johnson proved he has still got it at his old age. Surprisingly, Dan Ige ended up having quite a boring fight against Patricio Pitbull. Daniel Rodriguez got a great win in a scrap versus Kevin Holland, outdoing the loudmouth. The co-main event, we expected more of a war, but Paulo Costa was too much for Roman Kopylov, and Max Holloway outclassed and finally beat Dustin Poirier across 5 rounds in a scrap where the Diamond had an epic retirement and send-off in front of his hometown fans. A card which started so strong just let down as it went on due to a lack of finishes, but still nonetheless a strong card. Number 8, UFC 319. The UFC in 2025 took a pay-per-view to the Windy City, where it was headlined by one of the most anticipated title fights of the year and one of the biggest fights of 2025, with Khamzat Chimaev finally fighting for a world title against Dricus du Plessis. The early prelims had some close and competitive fights, with one finish where the prelims had more drama, with Chase Hooper and Alexander Hernandez having a competitive fight, until Hernandez got the KO at the end of the first round. Mikhail Oleslejczyk moved to the Fighting Nerds, where he found improvements in his striking, KOing Gerald Meerschaert in a quick KO, and teammate of Khamzat from Dana White's Contender Series, Baisankor Susakaev, having a back and forth bout against Eric Nolan, where he fought adversity but got the second round submission. The main card saw some huge fights from 5 different divisions, where Tim Elliott caused a huge upset against Kai Asakura, submitting him in the second round after Asakura fought well in the first. Michael Venom Page put on an awkward clinic, beating Jared Cannonier. Then Carlos Prates, off the back of his loss to Ian Gary, came back versus Jeff Neal and would score an epic spinning back elbow at the end of the round in a brutal and amazing KO, and one of the KOs of the year. This was followed by a huge matchup in the featherweight division, where Lerone Murphy was taking on the debuting Aaron Pico, where Pico was on the front foot having success until 3 minutes 20 seconds into round 1. Lerone Murphy secured a spinning back elbow to flatline Pico in an epic moment on the card to see back-to-back spinning back elbows. The main event followed, where we was expecting a fight of the year and one of the biggest fights of the year. However, Khamzat Chimaev pitched a smothering and boring shutout, dominating DDP, who had nothing to offer. It was great to see Khamzat become a champion and realise his potential. We could have done with more action in that fight. Overall, a fun card with 2 KO of the year contenders gets this card a decent spot. Number 7, UFC 315. Over the past few years, Canada has given us a bunch of bad pay-per-views due to the UFC not stacking their trips to the Great White North. This year was no different, however, with a fight card headlined by who many people argue is the most boring fighter in the UFC. Nonetheless, we got a fight card which delivered some great fights. The main event saw welterweight champion Belal Muhammad taking on relatively short notice Jack Della Maddalena, where many thought we would see Belal use his wrestling to get a boring decision. Instead, we got an epic 5-round war and one of the best fights of the year, where both men beat the crap out of each other for 5 rounds, where Jack was the more violent and definitive with his striking, to win a 5-round decision to become the new welterweight champion in an iconic moment. The co-main event saw a competitive bout between Valentina Shevchenko and Manon Fiorot, where Shevchenko won and got another title defense to add to her legacy. The featured fight, we had an epic war between Jose Aldo and Ayman Zahabi over 3 rounds, where back and forth and gave us some iconic swing rounds, including an amazing 3rd round, where Zahabi won and Aldo definitively retired. The rest of the card had some great performances from Benoit Saint Denis getting a great finish, and a bunch of the Canadians showing out and getting great wins and finishes overall. Finally, a very good card for the Canadians. Let's hope next year, if they get a pay-per-view, they get some stacked names on there. Number 6, UFC 311. The first pay-per-view of 2025 was headlined by 2 title bouts with huge implications in 2 divisions, with Merab defending against Umar Nurmagomedov and Islam Makhachev defending his title against Arman Tsarukyan. The early prelims had 4 fights with nothing too crazy, which was followed by some decent prelims where Grant Dawson beat Diego Ferreira, Bogdan Guskov submitted Billy Elakana, and Azamat Bakoev KOing Zachary Reese. The end of the prelims saw a fraud check from Raoni Barcelos, who defeated the hype Peyton Talbot in a boring fight, but an interesting moment on the card. The main card of this pay-per-view is where this card shines, giving us one of the main cards of the year, where Reina Derrida submitted Kevin Holland in a quick 1st round win. This was followed by a quick TKO from Jailton Almeida versus Sergey Spivak, and was then followed up by an amazing fight where Yuri Prohaska and Jamal Hill had an epic scrap, which led to an amazing KO in the 3rd round. Then an an epic world title fight where Merab and Umar went to war across a legendary 5-round fight where it was close and competitive in an epic fight where Merab won the close decision. The main event gave us drama before the fight as Arman Sarukian, who was scheduled to fight Islam Makhachev, had to pull out due to a back injury, where Renato Moicano replaced the world title fight where this added some last minute hype and drama. But Makhachev made easy work, submitting Renato in the first round in a definitive performance. Overall, a very strong card carried by a great main card which had great fights and drama and some brilliant finishes. Number 5, UFC 322. The biggest pay-per-view of the year and the UFC's annual MSG card had huge fights and huge title fights and stakes, with 2 title fights in the main event with Zhang Weili and Islam Makhachev chasing double champ status. The early prelims and prelims had some fun bouts and finishes where Baisankur Susukaya finished Eric McConaughey and Carl Dorcas got a quick submission versus Gerald Mearshart. Ethan Ewing made a quick short notice UFC debut and defeated Malcolm Wellmaker in a scrap. Erin Blanchfield beat Tracy Cortez via submission, but the end of the prelims was a bang, with Bo Nickel scoring a head kick against Rodolfo Vieira in an epic moment which led us to some legendary main card moments. The main card started with a quick KO from Benoit Saint-Denis against Beneil Dariush in an amazing comeback year for the Frenchman. This was followed by a legendary KO from Carlos Prates, who flatlined Leon Edwards in an iconic performance, and Michael Morales dispatched of Sean Brady with a 1-round TKO to cement himself atop the welterweight division. At this point we was tracking at some legendary main card pay-per-view. However, with Valentina Shevchenko pitching out a boring grappling shutout versus Zhang Weili to end her dreams of becoming a 2-weight world champion, halting the momentum of the card. This was followed by Islam Makhachev putting on a dominant display against Jack Della Maddalena in a suffocating performance. Where many of us was expecting a war, this was an anticlimactic end to what was tracking to be a legendary pay-per-view. However, it was amazing to see Islam Makhachev make history and show his GOAT status and show why he is pound for pound the best fighter in the world. Number 4, UFC 314. After a rough past 2 years and back-to-back losses to Islam Makhachev and Ilia Topuria, Alexander Volkanovski returned to headline UFC 314 in an attempt to reclaim featherweight gold. After Ilia Topuria vacated the world title, Volk would be fighting for undisputed gold against Diego Lopez, who was on an epic win streak. This led to a 5-round back and forth bout where both men had moments of success, but Volk was the busier and more effective across 5 rounds, where he won an epic decision in a heartfelt moment where it was amazing to see Volk win the world title and give an epic post-fight speech. The rest of the main card was great, with Paddy Pimblett destroying Michael Chandler in the co-main event, securing a brutal 3rd round stoppage. Yair Rodriguez schooled the debuting Patricio Pitbull, and in an epic grudge match, Gene Silver put on a dominant display and beat on Bryce Mitchell. And the main card opened with Dominic Reyes flatlining Nikita Krylov in a brilliant moment on the main card. The early prelims and prelims had some great fights and finishes, where Dan Ige, after a great back and forth, got the finish versus Sean Woodson, and Julian Erosa made quick work of Darren Ilkins. And the early prelims saw 3 of 4 finish, with Mikhail Olislejczek, Marco Tulio and Nora Canole getting finishes. Overall, this card was great top to bottom, with finishes, great fights and a main card which delivered some great action and performances to finish off with a feel-good moment with Volk winning the belt. Number 3, UFC 320. UFC 320 was super stacked from top to bottom, which delivered a memorable night of fights for 2025 that we would all remember, with the double-header title fights where Alex Pereira was looking to get back his world title versus Magomed Ankalaev, and Corey Sandhagen was looking to dethrone Yuri Prohaska, among some amazing title fights. The early prelims had nothing to rave about and go crazy over, but the prelims picked up the action where we saw Edmund Shabazian get an amazing KO over Andre Muniz. This was followed by Daniel Santos getting an amazing KO over the cocky Yu Kusang, then a quick finish by the hyped Atiba Gutierrez. These were some amazing prelims which improved on the earlier action. The main card, however, is where this card shines and delivers one of the best fight cards of the year. The main card opener, Joe Pyfer, put on a scrap versus Abbas Magomedov, where after a super competitive first round, the second round Pyfer picked up the pace and got the amazing finish. Yusuf Zalal would make quick work against Josh Emmett with a first round armbar submission. Then what would follow was a war and a scrap between Khalil Roundtree and Yuri Prohaska, where Khalil would coast the first 2 rounds, where Yuri gritted down and threw a storm at Khalil in the 3rd round, which gave us a round and moment of the year, where Yuri put the pressure on Khalil, breaking him up until the point where he flatlined and face planted Khalil in an epic KO and moment of the year. This was followed by a competitive scrap between Corey Sandhagen and Merab, where Corey did his best to try and dethrone Merab, but the Georgian drowned him across 5 rounds to win a decision, where Merab almost even scored a KO in the 2nd round. The main event gave us a moment many thought we wouldn't see, where Alex Pereira squared off with Magomed Ankalaev in a rematch where Poatan walked down Ankalaev instantly, putting the pressure on straight away and stunning Ankalaev, who panic shot for the takedown, where Pereira would elbow like crazy to score the TKO to reclaim the title in 80 seconds. This card started slow, but it picked up as it went on, where it culminated in a legendary main event, a moment which easily makes it one of the best fight cards of the year. Number 2, UFC 323. The final card of the year wasn't the most stacked of the year, but was packed with some great matchmaking and fun fights, which gave the ESPN era an epic send-off, headlined by two mainstay champs looking to defend their titles in Alexandra Pantoja and Merab Dvalishvili. The early prelims had some epic fights and finishes, and a round of the year contender and a fight of the year contender, where Myron Santos would start the card with a KO, and then Mansour Abdul Malik got a quick submission versus Antonio Trucoli. This was followed by the best 1 minute 30 seconds arguably in MMA history, where Iwo Baranowski took on Ibo Aslan, where we had a back and forth brawl with both guys dropping and rocking each other, swinging big with every shot, where after smashing each other and almost finishing each other, Baranowski landed the pivotal KO blow to get the win. Jalen Turner made his return, finishing and KOing Edson Barboza, and Bruno Ferrer beat on Marvin Vettori. The prelims had some epic action, with Fares Siam getting a finish versus Nazim Sadikov, Terence McKinney and Chris Duncan having an epic fast-paced 2 minute 30 scrap, with Duncan getting the submission and Manuel Torres KOing Grant Dawson with accurate striking. The main cards had some epic matchups with back and forth action between Jan Blachowicz and Bogdan Guskov, which was a draw. This was followed by Henry Cejudo and Peyton Tabot, where Tabot beat on Cejudo in a 3-round bout, where Cejudo showed toughness but retired on a beatdown loss in a great and epic fight. Brandon Moreno and Tatsuro Taira had a competitive bout where Taira got the finish in the second round, which was a bit of an early finish, but cool to see a new contender atop the flyweight division. The co-main event was one of the lowest moments of the year, where Alexandra Pantoja and Joshua Van squared off, where the bout was done in under 30 seconds due to an arm injury to Pantoja, which was the saddest end to what was becoming an epic title reign. But the main event gave us the performance of the year, where Piotr Johan defeated Merab in an epic fight and war where he proved the world wrong and beat Merab at his best in an epic title fight to end the last pay-per-view of the year. Epic fights up and down the card with amazing finishes, retirements, drama in title fights. UFC 323 was easily one of the best pay-per-views of the year, with the only unfortunate ending of the co-main event. Had we had a great co-main event, this could have easily stole the number 1 spot. Nonetheless, an amazing way for ESPN to bow out on pay-per-views, and UFC 323 giving us the second best pay-per-view of the year. Number 1, UFC 317. The UFC's International Fight Week gave us the best pay-per-view of the year, headlined by 2 title fights, where atop the bill we had Ilia Topuria fighting for vacant lightweight gold against Charles Oliveira, after Islam Makhachev vacated his title with welterweight aspirations. The co-main event would see Alexandre Pantoja looking to defend his title against Kai Kara France. The prelims only had 2 fights, with fights falling through, with the key moment being Jacob Smith getting a submission win. The prelims had some epic action with 3 first-round finishes, with Terence McKinney getting a quick submission against Vyacheslav Borshev, Jose Delgado getting a KO in under 30 seconds against Haider Emil, courtesy of a huge knee, and one of the best and most brutal KOs of the year, with Gregory Rodriguez flatlining Jack Hermansson with a heavy KO. The main card grew as it went on, with Peyton Talbot and Felipe Lima having a competitive bout, but it was nothing special. Beneil Dariush beat on Renato Moicano in what wasn't the most exciting action, but the card was saved by arguably the fight of the year, where Brandon Royval would go to war with Joshua Van on the feet in an amazing striking battle, where Van had the amazing first round, followed by Royval fighting back in the second and winning that round. The third round was all to play for, where we got an epic back and forth war, where Van slowly pushed away with an amazing last 10 seconds, with Van dropping Royval to steal the round and win the fight. Alexandre Pantoja beat down and stifled Kai Kara France across 3 rounds, where he would secure the third round submission in an epic win for the Brazilian to defend his title. The main event saw Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira squaring off in a hyped matchup, where Oliveira pressured early, with Topuria reversing the position and dominating with the grappling, where the fight went back to the feet, where Topuria landed the vicious KO to put Oliveira out cold to become the double champion in an epic end and moment to the pay-per-view. A legendary pay-per-view with some brutal KOs, a fight of the year, great moments all over. UFC 317 was the number 1 pay-per-view of 2025 and earns the well-deserved gold medal on this list as the best pay-per-view of 2025. Did you enjoy the video? Let us know down in the comments below. What do you think is the best pay-per-view pay-per-view of 2025, and how would you rank all the pay-per-views of 2025? Put that down in the comments below. And if you like these ranking videos, check out our previous year videos where we've ranked other years' pay-per-views from 2022, 2023 and 2024. Leave a like if you've enjoyed the video, subscribe for more MMA and fight content coming soon. We hope you enjoyed the video and we'll catch you in the next one.